All right, Vermont Senator Peter Welch held a roundtable discussion with Canadian business leaders on President Trump's tariffs on Canadian goods, while Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said that Canada could only go so far in responding to tariffs given the mismatched size between the two economies.
It didn't start with a bang. No sirens, no headlines, just a quiet disappearance of $36 billion in U.S. debt, gone. Not by enemies, but by allies. And leading the exit? Canada, the neighbor we once called loyal, the partner we thought would never walk. While Trump stood on stage shouting about tariffs, Canada moved in silence, like a surgeon, not a soldier. Not with noise, but with a deadline. July 21st. That's not just a date. That's a countdown to something far more dangerous than a trade war. Because this isn't about steel or corn anymore. This is about trust. And for the first time in decades, America isn't just losing deals. It's losing friends. The ones who kept our factories alive. The ones we took for granted. And now, our loudest cheerleader just became our quietest threat. Canada isn't asking for a fair deal anymore. They're preparing to walk and take their business and billions with them. But here's what really happened. The crowd cheered when Trump said it. Tariffs are strength, he declared, pounding the podium. To his supporters, it sounded like action, like America pushing back. But a few hundred miles north, Mark Carney wasn't clapping. He wasn't tweeting. He was mapping out pressure points, because long before Trump delivered his latest threat, Canada had already done its homework. Reuters confirmed it. Carney's team had quietly finalized a comprehensive tariff response. They didn't wait for a press conference. They didn't posture. They planned. Their targets weren't random. They were surgical. Not just aluminum and lumber, but soybean exports, corn, machinery. Industries rooted deep in swing states, the same states that handed Trump his victory. And unlike Trump's tariff approach, which often changed week to week, Canada's plan was steady, simulated, and coordinated across ministries and provinces. This wasn't a tantrum. It was a trap, because Carney understood something Trump ignored. You don't need to shout to strike. By the time U.S. officials scrambled to decipher Ottawa's intent, the moves were already in motion. Tariff schedules written, trade partners briefed, logistics recalibrated. And when Trump turned up the volume, Carney turned up the leverage. It wasn't retaliation. It was readiness. And that shift from reactive to strategic marked a new kind of standoff. But what happened next wasn't just about politics. It was about survival. Deadlines usually come with noise, negotiators racing the clock, headlines buzzing. But this one? It's coming in silence, and it's set for July 24th. Canada's not waiting to see what Washington does. It's acting as if the answer is already no. Behind the scenes, Carney's government has been running full-spectrum simulations, preparing tariff triggers down to the county level. The targets aren't symbolic, they're surgical. According to Reuters, entire regional export profiles have been mapped, from soybean shipments in Iowa to auto parts in Pennsylvania. This is less about punishment, more about precision. And here's the part most Americans don't realize. While Washington argues over language, Ottawa already wrote the next chapter. They've lined up provincial premiers, they've briefed corporate boards, they've stress-tested the impact. These tariffs aren't a warning shot. They're a decision, quiet, legal, final. And the July 21st deadline? That's not when negotiations begin. That's when the new rules start playing out, whether the U.S. likes them or not. Trump's team may believe delay equals power. But in Canada's war room, the delay has been priced in. And unless Washington offers more than slogans, the tariffs go live, not with drama, with discipline. And the fallout? It won't hit cable news first. It'll hit the people who thought their jobs were safe. Before the headlines, before the tariffs, there were purchase orders, and a lot of them came from Canada. In places like Toledo, Flint, and Fort Wayne, that meant paychecks. Thousands of workers in the Midwest depended on Canadian demand, not as a bonus, but as survival. Car parts, machine tools, processed steel, you name it, Canada bought it. According to CNN, Canada is still the #1 customer for over 30 U.S. states, many of them in the Rust Belt. This isn't foreign aid, it's business. But as Carney quietly shifts trade deals toward Europe and Asia, that lifeline is fraying. Not with a bang, but with missed shipments. Delayed contracts, cold calls that don't get returned. And the people feeling it first? A 58-year-old welder in Indiana, a truck driver in western Pennsylvania, a factory scheduler in Illinois. This isn't about geopolitics anymore. It's about groceries, rent, keeping the lights on. The twist? The very tariffs meant to protect American jobs are now pushing away the one customer that actually kept them alive. And in this kind of silent war, it's not bullets that cost you, it's silence. But Carney wasn't finished. While Washington barks about leverage, he was busy building something else. At the G7 in Canmore, Alberta, the room was electric. But not because of policy. Because of performance, Trump dominated the spotlight, flashing headlines, abrasive sound bites. He scolded NATO, accused Asia of manipulation, called out Europe for freeloading. But behind the curtain, Mark Carney was doing something quieter and far more lasting. While Trump was sparring over microphones, Carney was negotiating door to door, delegate to delegate. According to Reuters, by the time the summit wrapped, Canada had locked in over a dozen new economic pledges. Green hydrogen infrastructure with Germany, rare earth refining tech with Japan, expanded rail and port access deals with the EU. None of it required a podium. None of it included the United States. For the first time in a generation, a G7 member made major multilateral moves and didn't ask for Washington's approval. Because Carney wasn't building a moment. He was building a map, a new global supply chain where Canada could function independently. And the other leaders, they signed. Quickly, gladly. Not because they feared Trump, but because they were tired of depending on him. This wasn't about punishing America. It was about protecting themselves from it. And that protection, that insulation, was about to scale fast. Because what started at the G7 didn't end there. The headlines focused on tariffs, but behind closed doors, the real shift was happening. One contract at a time. Ryanair, one of Europe's largest low-cost carriers, quietly began reconsidering its $30 billion order of Boeing's 737 MAX jets. No press conference, no protest, just a signal to the market. Boeing was no longer a sure bet. In the vacuum, China's Comac moved fast. Its C919 aircraft, once dismissed as a distant third, was suddenly getting serious attention from European buyers. The reason? Not price, not performance, but predictability. In global aviation, trust isn't built on slogans. It's built on 10-year timelines, steady parts deliveries, and the quiet assurance your supplier won't vanish behind politics. And in 2025, Boeing, the flagship of American aerospace, no longer offered that guarantee. According to CNN, multiple international firms have begun relocating critical infrastructure and contracts out of the U.S. Not for cost-cutting, but for stability. Carney saw that vacuum coming, and he filled it with clean energy deals, rare earth commitments, and logistics corridors that bypass American ports entirely. He didn't react. He pre-built a fallback. So while Washington debates its next headline, Ottawa is locking in its next decade. Because America didn't lose a battle, it lost trust. And trust, once it shifts, doesn't come back easily. That's the real cost of unpredictability. So what now? The cameras have moved on. The speeches are over. But something deeper has shifted. And it won't be televised. Allies don't need to slam the door when they're already halfway down the hall. They just stop returning calls, stop renewing contracts, stop believing that the U.S. will follow through. Mark Carney understood that. He didn't argue. He architected. While Trump chased applause, Carney wrote terms, in ink, not tweets. And when July 21st arrives, it won't come with a bang. It'll come with a series of decisions already made, the kind you don't feel until they've already passed you. The kind that shaped decades, not news cycles. This wasn't a trade war. It was a trust correction. And America wasn't defeated. It was bypassed. Because in the end, the quietest power move wasn't a tariff or a treaty. It was a decision by your closest allies to stop waiting. So ask yourself, when the world starts writing the next chapter of global leadership, will the United States even be in the room, or will it still be speaking to a crowd that's already walked away?